Khan Ross was a senior British diplomat at the UN responsible for imposing the embargo on Iraq. You gave evidence on the impact of sanctions.
Yes.
And this is what you said. The weight of evidence clearly indicates that sanctions caused massive human suffering among ordinary Iraqis, in particular children. We, the US and UK governments, were the primary engineers and defenders of sanctions and were well aware of this evidence at the time. But we largely ignored it or blamed all these effects on the Saddam government. Sanctions effectively denied the entire population the means to live, unquote. That's a shocking admission.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I stand by it today.
Why didn't you speak out during those 4.5 years?
There is a certain macho culture in foreign policy circles that to talk about things like humanitarian suffering when you're dealing with Saddam Hussein is a bit wet. You know, that it's not what the issue is really about, that governments do security, that's the kind of hard thing that we're there to provide. And I think however wrong your decisions may be, whatever damage you may do to other individuals, there is at the end of the day no accountability whatsoever. We had extraordinarily good resources to put together our story, to find little facts to justify their story, factoids I began to call them.
And how eagerly would journalists accept these factoids?
They had very little chance to do anything other than accept our version of events and more or less relay it unedited to the public. Government is an information machine, and we would control access for journalists to us, to governments. When I was in news department in the Foreign Office, we would control access to the Foreign Secretary as a form of reward to journalists if they were critical, if we felt they were too hostile to our account of events. We would not give them the goodies of trips with the Foreign Secretary around the world, or exclusive interviews every now and then. We did the same in New York. If journalists were not particularly supportive to our account, we would freeze them out. We would make life harder for them. But there is a subtle and private relationship between them, which is basically of favoritism, that certain journalists are rewarded with access for being supportive of the story. They will basically tell journalists, you carry on with that line, that kind of unjustified criticism of our government policy on X, Y, or Z, we will punish you. And that is very explicit, those kinds of threats. What happened was not an intelligence-based process, it was basically a PR process run by Number 10 to produce a document that was much more politically credible than the evidence suggested.
It was a major deception, wasn't it?
I think it amounts, in effect, to that, yes. I remember before I was sent to New York in late '97, I did the round of departments in London saying to them, OK, I'm going to New York, I'm going to be doing Iraq, what do I need to know? And I went to see Non-Proliferation Department in the Foreign Office, and I was expecting a briefing on the vast piles of weapons that we still thought Iraq possessed. And the desk officer sort of looked at me slightly sheepishly and said, well, actually, we don't think there's anything. We don't think there's anything in Iraq. I said, that's extraordinary. I mean, I thought we had sanctions because we thought Iraq had large amounts of weapons. He said, no, the justification for sanctions is basically that we have unanswered questions about how those stocks were destroyed in the past. But what I feel very guilty about it. I feel very ashamed about it. I feel ashamed about it sitting talking to you. You know, I feel actual shame running through my body when I talk to you about it.